Let the David Moyes discussion begin. We are again in the same situation we find ourselves week in and week out. The fan base is split, especially if you look at social media. You would believe that half the fan base think Moyes should be leaving the club, could be sacked, and should be sacked immediately, with the other half of the fan base stating that David Moyes should be staying in a job. Now, I've become accustomed to the fact that people believe that I am completely Moyes in more than anyone around on the social media channels. I mean, I don't sit and watch all the social media channels because it's no disrespect to anyone else. It's just down to the fact of timings. Obviously, we put a lot of effort into the channel, and to sit and watch all the other channels would mean that I would have literally no time to go and spend time with my kids. However, when you traipse around social media, you start to get the vibe of where people are thinking and what they're thinking. And obviously, West Ham coming off the back of a crap result against Brentford is really disappointing. I'm more disappointed than I am pissed off, but I'll let you know exactly where I am as a West Ham fan, because I think it's easy for me to potentially hide behind the fact that I present shows and try my best to give a kind of semi-real opinion on the situation. But I put it as follows. Right now at West Ham, there's an inconsistent level of performance. We started the season off really well when people really doubted us. Now, I am a half glass full West Ham fan, so when I look at the fixtures, I've always been of the mindset that sometimes the bigger they come, the harder they fall. But when you look at our first 6 fixtures and you see how West Ham came out of that on top, and came out of our first couple of fixtures in Europa League on top, then it's hard not to defend the situation and say, well, that's why West Ham stuck with David Moyes. But then you look at the next row of games and you start to think, well, what's actually happening at West Ham? And it's hard to defend why David Moyes should stay in his role. But there are goods and there are bads, and there are bads that come with the goods. And people are talking about levels of consistency. So if we're going to back up that level of consistency, my argument to the situation is I believe David Moyes has been and earned the benefit of the doubt, because in the Premier League, I genuinely don't believe there are many managers that can survive a 6-game loss streak. I really don't think there is. I don't have the facts. I don't have the figures in front of me. I don't have the facts of a manager that has gone 6 games and survived and get beat in the Premier League and lost. Now, panic sitting amongst a lot of the fan base, because we've seen the Nottingham Forest result yesterday against Aston Villa. We've seen they've turned them over, and we play up them next in the Premier League. And you can't help but feel like that game is going to be quite decisive to West Ham's season. But we all know that David Moyes works well under pressure, and that's what happened last season when we were rumoured to be his final game in West Ham in charge. But then he beat Fulham, and bang, he was in for the season. The reason why I say give a manager the benefit of the doubt is because if the structure, the system, everything behind what's been built at West Ham, because I do believe something is being built at West Ham, whether people believe it or not, I do think something is happening for a positive rather than a negative. What I mean by that is things that are happening in behind the scenes, whether that means that eventually the owners do look at selling up the club, which I do hope that they do, and we have new investors come into the club eventually. That is what my long-term goal for the club is. I don't favour the current ownership at all. I really haven't. I've never have done, and I never really will do. I'll never forgive the situation that's happened, but we've been there, gone that, done that, and wore the t-shirt. The only thing I'll give them the hands down to is the fact that they brought Moyes back and backed them. And what I mean by that is, if you bring in David Moyes after getting rid of the manager originally, and then West Ham progress as a club, which I don't think many people can remotely deny that we have, because over the last 3 seasons, we've had success, reaping success. And for me, the reason why I say what I say about sticking by Moyes right now is that, yes, things are not well, things are not going well. But unless there's a manager up for grabs that's going to come in and change the whole philosophy of the club, who is at the level that we realistically think we're going to get in, then why would we change the situation at the stage of the season we're at just now? So early on in the season, it wouldn't make sense to me. In actual fact, I think it could be a calamitous decision by the club. And that's why I agree with the system of what they've put in, which is, you know, if there's a rot, then that's fine. We need to stop that rot. And I get that to a certain extent. But what I don't want to be happen to West Ham is bite our heads off to spite our face. Because for me, bite our nose off to spite our face. Because for me, you could go and bring in unheard of managers that would take time to adapt to the league. You could run into some deep, deep trouble in that situation. And you could find West Ham genuinely looking at relegation in the face. Now, people could say, well, we could look at relegation in the face under David Moyes. We keep going like this. We'll be in a relegation battle under David Moyes. I genuinely believe people have been saying that for 3 years. And the only time we looked relegation in the face was last season. And even at that point, we got safe within a few games to go. Then we went ahead and won the Europa Conference League. I bring that up because that's vital. Nobody should ever downplay that competition. We're West Ham. We won a European Cup. Never downplay that competition. I genuinely believe if you do play that competition as a West Ham fan, then I genuinely don't know where your mindset is as a West Ham fan. Not digging you out individually if you are watching. I'm just saying it's your opinion versus my opinion. But for me, this comes on the differentiating between someone who is Moyes in and Moyes out. For me, the argument really shouldn't be here. For me, the argument shouldn't be part of the conversation. The reason why the argument shouldn't be part of the conversation is because we're so early into the season. And if you take the Brentford game for an example, you look at the first half and you think, what a great first half. Then you look at the second half and you think, what the fuck's going on? Even me, a positive West Ham fan, doesn't understand the Danny Ings, doesn't understand the Mickey Antonio, doesn't understand the Mubama situation on the park, doesn't understand where the intensity left West Ham at halftime, doesn't understand why we stopped pressing to the level that we did. I didn't understand it. I don't get it. I don't think we've got a leader on the park right now. I think we've not just gone through a couple of transitions. I think we've gone through quite a few major transitions, if I'm being really honest. We've lost a captain. We've lost consecutive captains, people that speak really clearly, really loudly, really with authority, really taking a charge in that dressing room. We've lost 2 consecutives in a season. And bang, we're left with no one really stepping up to that position. And I think that's where we're faltering, to be honest. And I think that is something that we're going to have to look at quicker, sooner, rather than later. I don't know what the answer is because it's not my job to do it. I don't doubt for a second Tim Stein has been brought into the role for a reason, for a reason to go and do his job, which is to eventually probably bring in David Moyes' successor. David Moyes is at an age where he does probably believe in the project that he's doing. He's come off a fantastic win, and people get fed up with the benefit of the doubt comment. But in actual fact, if you look at the start of the season, many people would have been looking there. Not many people were shouting out, oh, well, it's all going to fail come the December. People only really started saying that once we went a couple of games of not playing well and not doing well. I guess it's frustrating at times. It pisses me off as much as it pisses you off. But for me, what's the point in jumping ship in November, early November, when no one else is available who's going to come in and add what we're looking, which is the va-va-voom? The benefit of the doubt is he has earned the benefit of the doubt to try and turn things around. I'll give this one to you. If things don't change in the next couple of games and we don't get results in the next couple of games, then so be it. But that is the Premier League. That doesn't mean that West Ham are in a unique situation with the manager. That's the Premier League. That is the Premier League of England, the money league, the league that dictates where, what teams come into, what money they've got, what players they sign, what managers come in, what managers go. It's all dependent on the position that you finish in and how much money you bring on to bring a little bit of success, if you can, along the way. I want most success. I want amazing success for West Ham. Who doesn't if you're a West Ham fan? But for me, I would be scared to look at another manager who's unheard of in the Premier League because I need that. It needs to be built from the back end, back to front to back, you name it. It's got to be built there. People may say to me, do I think Moyes is doing that job at West Ham? I don't know. Listen, I went to the Paolo Di Canio night. Paolo Di Canio spoke out and he said, what I'm seeing at West Ham, there definitely are changes being made and there are things being implemented at the club. That goes from the situation behind the scenes from all the coaching staff, which, yes, okay, it's been a revolving door, but, you know, Kevin Nolan's still sticking about, Billy McKinley's hanging about at the club. You're bringing in some of the other people, maybe futuristic thinking, future thinking football coaches, Heitinga, you name it. All these people are coming in through the door. You're looking at scouting systems set up, player systems set up. You've got scouting systems in Brazil, scouting systems over in the Scandinavian islands. There's so many different situations there. And for me, Moyes has earned the benefit of the doubt. At minimum, you don't get rid right now. But if the rock kicks in for the next 2 or 3 games, then who can argue against it? Who can argue against it? But I ask you this, if it's the same at Burnley, who can argue against it? If it's the same at Bournemouth, which, for example, who can argue against it? If it's the same with Arsenal, Manchester City, if there's a rot that kicks in, doesn't matter what club you are in the Premier League. That's what happens. That's my opinion. I'm not saying I'm Moyes in. I'm not saying I'm Moyes out. I'm saying right now, the benefit should be given to David Moyes. Therefore, it should not be an argument. Let's get behind the club. I'm not saying if you don't believe in Moyes, you're not behind the club. I'm just saying let's get behind the club and let's hope for results against Olympiacos, Nottingham Forest, before we come into the international window. I'm sure you'll see me over the next couple of days for more West Ham content. Take it easy. And of course, come on, you Irons.